Welcome to English Conversations. Listen, read, and practice your English. Let's begin our lesson.
Hello, and welcome to the program. Today we have scientist Doug McLeod in the studio with us. He's going to tell us about some of the everyday things we know and love that were invented by accident. Doug?
Hello, Janet. Well, I'm going to start with the microwave oven. In 1945, an engineer named Percy Spencer was testing some new radar equipment. He had a chocolate bar in his pocket, and while he was standing in front of the machine, it melted. After that, he also tried using the microwaves from the radar equipment to cook popcorn. Percy realized that microwaves could heat and cook food, and so the microwave oven was born.
How interesting. What else do you have for us, Doug?
Next is something that is found in hospitals all over the world, the X-ray machine. In 1895, a German physicist named Wilhelm Röntgen was experimenting with electrical rays in a dark room. He was directing them through a glass tube covered with black paper. Suddenly, he saw a light on a screen on the wall, and he realized that the rays could pass through the glass and the paper. After that, he experimented with his own hand and found that he could see the bones. The first X-ray ever made was an image of Röntgen's wife's hand. You can even see her wedding ring.
That's fascinating, Doug. We have time for one more.
Many different kinds of food were discovered by accident, Janet, and I've chosen something that we call potato chips, but the British call crisps. These were invented by a chef named George Crumb, who was working in a restaurant near Saratoga Springs, New York. A customer complained that the French fries he was served were too thick. The chef was angry about this, so he fried some very thin potatoes and covered them with salt. The customer loved them, and after that, Saratoga chips became popular all over the U.S. Eventually, they were produced for people to eat at home.
That was all very fascinating, Doug. Thanks for joining us.
Amy, did you study foreign languages in high school?
Yes, I did. Actually, I used to be really good at languages.
Which ones did you study?
Well, I took French for 5 years, and then I took Japanese for 6 years, and I studied Spanish for a year during my lunch break.
And how much French can you remember?
Not much, but I can remember my Japanese because I took it for my degree in college. Why all the questions, Tony?
Well, I've just read this article about the state of language learning in schools in the U.S., and it isn't looking good. It says that adults only remember about 7 words from the languages they studied at school.
Only 7 words? That isn't very good, is it? What kinds of words do they remember?
Common words like hello, goodbye, please, thank you, 1, 2, and 3, and the question, do you speak English?
So, what happens when people are abroad? Do they practice the language?
Not at all. In fact, the article suggests that people often choose not to go on vacation to countries where they have to worry about language problems.
That's probably because they're too lazy to learn a language.
No, it isn't that. The article says it's because they're too embarrassed to try and speak it.
Okay, so which languages do students study in school today?
Hang on a minute. There's a list here somewhere. Here it is. It says 50% of students study Spanish, 25% study French, 22% study Japanese, and 2% Russian. Arabic is becoming more popular too.
And what are schools going to do about the problem?
Well, first of all, they're going to introduce language classes for children in elementary schools. And then they're going to start offering languages from around the world. For example, Mandarin Chinese, and Urdu.
That sounds difficult. Anyway, Tony, which languages did you use to study at school?
Only French, and I was terrible at it. I made a bad decision once when I was traveling home to Washington, D.C. from college in Boston, a trip of almost 450 miles. The choice was going by train or by bus, and I opted for the train because it was quicker. Unfortunately, the train broke down on the way, so in the end, I took 2 hours longer than I expected.
The worst decision I ever made was giving my son a skateboard for his 10th birthday. On the morning of his birthday, we went down to the park to try it out. Sadly, he fell off the board as soon as he got on it and broke his arm. We had to cancel his birthday party, and we spent the whole day in the hospital instead.
I had 2 interviews and both companies offered me a job. In the first job, they offered me more money, but it was a long way from where I live, an hour traveling every day. The second job was less money, but it was very close to my house. In the end, I chose the second job instead, and I'm very happy I did, because last month the first company closed down.
One time, I had to decide between a good friend of mine and a boy I really liked. I was going to a concert with my friend, and then this boy asked me to go to the movies with him on the same night. In the end, I said no to the boy and went to the concert with my friend. I found out later that the boy already had a girlfriend, so I think I made the right decision.
You won't believe what happened to me. I buy coffee from the same coffee shop every day. One day I was late for work, so I didn't stop at the coffee shop. Of course, that was the day the coffee shop was celebrating its 10-year anniversary. It gave away tickets for 10 free drinks. Everyone in my office got the tickets but me.
The worst loser I know is my mom. We often used to play cards together when I was little, and if my mom was losing, it was safer to stop playing. She was always happy when she was winning, but when she was losing, you could see her getting angrier and angrier until she exploded. Sometimes, she used to go out of the room because she was so upset.
I once had a friend who was a bad loser at tennis. In fact, we stopped talking to each other because of a tennis match. We were about 20 at the time, and on this occasion, we were arguing over a point. I said the ball was out, and she said it was in. In the end, she just threw her racket into the net and left. We haven't spoken since.
I have to be very careful at work when we're talking about ice hockey. I have a colleague who gets really upset when his team loses, and he hates it if you make a joke about it. I tried it once, and he just stood up, walked out, and closed the door with a bang. He didn't speak to me for days after that, so I don't think I'll try it again.
My son is a very bad loser. In fact, he always has been. He's 12 now, but he still hates losing. We used to play board games together when he was little, but he always used to cry if he didn't win. I had to choose between letting him win all the time or making him upset if I won. In the end, I stopped playing that kind of game with him.
One of the guys who plays basketball with me gets incredibly upset during games, and he spends most of the time shouting at the other players. He's a really nervous person at the best of times, but when we're losing, it really is too much. The referee throws him off the court at least twice a month, and once our coach told him to go home.
Can I ask you about your job, Jerry?
Yes, of course. Go ahead.
What time do you go to bed?
Well, I don't often get home before 6 o'clock in the morning, and it usually takes me a little while to relax. It's probably about 7 by the time I go to sleep.
And what time do you have to get up again?
I usually get up at 1 o'clock to have lunch with my family. After that, I go back to bed again for an hour or so, until about 3 o'clock.
Do you need an alarm clock to wake up?
No, I never use one. I wake up the first time when my children come home from school for lunch. The second time, my wife wakes me up. That's when I get up for good.
How do you feel when you wake up?
It depends on the day, really. If I've only worked for a day or two, I'm full of energy. But if it's after the 5th or 6th night in a row, I'm absolutely exhausted. That's when I find it really hard to get out of bed.
What do you do about meals, Jerry?
Well, like I said, my first meal of the day is what you would call lunch. Then I have dinner at about midnight with some other drivers in a cafe. When I get home in the morning, I have something light, like a cheese sandwich or some toast before I go to bed.
Would you like to change your working hours, Jerry?
If I changed my working hours, I wouldn't earn as much money. There's a lot more work at night because people go out for dinner and to the theater or movies, and then it's late and they need to get home, and they don't want to drive because they're tired. I enjoy my job, really, because I meet a lot of interesting people.
And to finish off today's program, we're going to take a look at some famous twins. Let's start with probably the earliest set of twins in history, Romulus and Remus. Now, the legend says that they were abandoned by their parents because twins were thought to bring bad luck. Fortunately, they were found by a female wolf, which looked after them when they were babies. According to legend, the boys grew up and later founded the city of Rome. After some time, they began to argue, and eventually Romulus killed Remus. As Romulus was the only brother alive, the city was called Rome after him. Let's move on in history to the 1950s, when a set of twins named the Cray brothers caused a lot of trouble in London's East End. Ronnie and Reggie Cray were both nightclub owners. They had expensive lifestyles, and through their nightclubs they met several American stars like Frank Sinatra and Judy Garland. However, they were also extremely violent people, and they committed many illegal crimes in the city. They were involved in many robberies and murders until they were eventually arrested in 1969. They were both sent to prison for life, and they both died when they were in their 60s. On a happier note, the youngest twins ever to become famous are the Olsen twins. Mary-Kate and Ashley Olsen were given the same role on the American TV series Full House when they were only 6 months old. They played the part of a little girl, and they played the same part for 8 years. The producers used both sisters to play the same part so that they didn't break the law on the number of hours a child could work. The show was very popular with American audiences. Today, the twins have grown up, and they have a fashion business. And I'm afraid that's all we have time for. Join me, Roy Thompson, at 4 o'clock tomorrow afternoon for another 2 hours of Thompson's Choice. Bye for now.
And now it's time for the news. A Florida couple's cell phones were stolen while they were visiting family last week. Mary and Richard Ranieri had left their car unlocked, and someone took their cell phones. Luckily, one of the cell phones had a GPS tracking device. The couple tracked the cell phone to a nearby home. The Ranieris called the police, and an officer went to the house. He talked to a man whose grandson had arrived home just after the cell phones had been stolen. The grandson told the officer he hadn't taken the phones, but a few minutes later, someone called the phones, and they began ringing from a closet in the grandson's room. A tourist had a lucky escape yesterday while she was bungee jumping off the Victoria Falls in Zambia. 22-year-old Erin Langworthy fell into the river because her bungee rope had broken when she jumped. She landed in the water with her feet still tied to the broken rope, and then she swam to safety. Ms. Langworthy was taken straight to the hospital after the accident, but had no serious injuries. A Swedish woman has found the white gold wedding ring that she lost over 16 years ago. Lena Paulsson had taken off the ring while she was cooking with her daughters. When she went to put it back on again, it had disappeared. That is, until yesterday, when she was picking vegetables in her garden, and she found the ring around a carrot. The ring doesn't fit Mrs. Paulsson anymore, but she is going to have it made bigger. An Australian woman had a frightening experience last night when she discovered an adult crocodile in her living room. 42-year-old Jo Dodd got out of bed when she heard her dog barking. When she opened the bedroom door, she saw a crocodile in the middle of the room. Mrs. Dodd woke her husband, who called the local crocodile management center, and a crocodile catcher came to take the animal away. The crocodile had escaped from a nearby crocodile farm earlier in the week. And that's all for now. I'll be back again at 9 o'clock for the next news update.
Who do you think gossips more, Jessica? Men or women?
Well, I gossip a lot with my female colleagues at work, so I suppose that women are the biggest gossips. What do you think?
Yes, that's what I thought too. But it says here that it's actually men who are the biggest gossips. That's what the results of this survey say anyway.
What survey?
This one here in the newspaper. It says the survey was carried out by a telecommunications company. They wanted to do research into gossiping for a new service they're offering. The aim of the survey was to find out what kind of people enjoy gossiping and how much time they spend doing it.
So what did they find out?
Well, they had a big surprise. The study showed that a fifth of the men they interviewed said they spent at least 3 hours a day gossiping.
Wow, that's a lot. And where do they usually gossip?
Most of them said they usually gossiped at work. Hang on, I can give you the exact figures. Yes, 55% of the men said they gossiped at work compared to 46% of the women.
Goodness, I didn't realize men had so much to say. Did they tell the researchers what they usually talked about?
Yes, they said that their main topics of conversation were their women colleagues and who in the company would get the next promotion.
The part about women colleagues doesn't surprise me in the least. So, what about the women in the survey? Did they say what they talked about?
Yes, they did. They told the researchers that they talked about the problems they were having in their families. They also chatted about what was happening in their favorite TV series.
Okay, so what about you, Alan? Do you ever gossip at work?
What? Me? No, never. I wouldn't dream of it.
I used to watch a quiz show called What's My Line? It was a funny show. 4 celebrity panelists asked a contestant questions about his or her occupation. The contestant could only answer yes or no. After asking several questions, the panelists had to guess the contestant's job. Sometimes there was a mystery guess such as a famous actor or musician. Instead of naming the mystery guest's occupation, the panelists had to guess the mystery guest's name.
My favorite quiz show is Cash Cab. It takes place in a moving New York City cab. The contestants are people who actually want to take a cab someplace. When they get in the cab, the driver, who's the host, asks them questions during the ride. If the contestants answer the questions correctly, they win money. If they get 3 answers wrong, they have to leave the cab. My favorite kind of question is a red light challenge, where contestants have to think of as many answers as possible to a question.
I used to listen to Wait, Don't Tell Me a radio news program with a few news quizzes added for fun. There were always 3 celebrity panelists who made jokes about the news. One quiz I particularly enjoyed was Bluff the Listener. A contestant listens to 3 silly but related news items that are read by the panelists. 2 of the stories aren't true, and 1 story is an actual news story. The listener has to guess which story is true.
I've always enjoyed the quiz show Who Wants to Be a Millionaire? It started in the U.S. in 1999, and it's still on TV today. In each show, one contestant is asked a series of questions, and they have to choose the right answer out of 4 possible options. It's pretty exciting, really, because a contestant can win up to $1 million if they're good.
My favorite quiz show when I was a teenager was Rock and Roll Jeopardy! It wasn't on for long, only a couple of years, but I used to love it. There were 3 contestants who had to answer questions about rock music, but the answers had to be in the form of a question. Each question was worth a different amount of money, and the winning player got his or her score in cash. I used to watch it every week.